Hello everyone. Welcome to the fourth day of Asia Enterprise Blockchain Week. So if you're wondering, like, why do I look different? So just to let you know, Jason couldn't make it today. He's have had a small back injury on a rock climbing incident, but he's fine though. He's just taking a bit of rest today, so he couldn't make it. But I'm continuing to moderate the panel today. So we are on the fourth day of the week. So if you guys been following our events, we actually did an Enterprise Blockchain Week previously as well, where we actually discuss a lot about what are the blockchain protocols out there and what are the technologies available to build enterprise-based blockchain solutions and blockchain solutions for businesses. And today we are following around with the same discussion where we are actually going on a panel to discuss use cases in capital markets. And joining with us, we have a representative from Tezos and Fennel Capital, who will be talking about the use cases in capital markets and a bit about their projects and how you can actually build something, like in capital markets using blockchain. So, before we get started, of course, we need to highlight the sponsor. And the interesting thing is I'm the sponsor, and I'm actually talking about myself, so it's a bit weird. But in this case, it's brought to you by Asia Blockchain Center. So I'm the CEO of Asia Blockchain Center, for those who don't know. It's actually the largest blockchain center in the world right now. It's a 12 stories building that we actually pick up, and we basically decided to convert it into a blockchain center. We have everything from like multiple different facilities that we are preparing at the moment, everything from underground parking, co-working space, like an office rental space for blockchain startups and blockchain companies to come in and rent out. We are also preparing some incubation space, some startup fund, and it's 12 stories of all facilities that are available to support blockchain ecosystem. And we also already been doing such engagement, like supporting awareness events such as this, to support the community, to educate the community about what is blockchain, how can they use it, how can they build the ideas. And at the same time, we're also bringing in other support services like education, capital, and at the same time also government, trying to engage with the government to bring regulatory support into the space as well. So currently, Asia Blockchain Center is trying to be the hub of all blockchain innovation. If you have any suggestions, if you have any ideas on how we actually can improve what we have here and how we can work with you on building a more vibrant blockchain ecosystem, please contact me. So we decided to sponsor this. By right, it should be Jason here today and another representative from Bitcoin Malaysia. But just to let you know, I'm also part of Bitcoin Malaysia. And I usually host a lot of the events together, but I'm usually at the back and kind of try to be more in the background, kind of supporting those events. But today I decided to come up front and talk to you guys and moderate this panel since Jason couldn't do it. So throughout this week, I think we already touched on multiple topics. On the Monday, we talked about blockchain as a service. If you missed that, you actually can see it on our YouTube page and also Asia Blockchain Center's Facebook. Then we talked about traceability on Tuesday and insurance. And after that, we couldn't do the insurance panel because Jason wasn't around. And in this case, and after that, today we are moving on to capital markets. And please join us tomorrow. We are talking about next generation distributed ledger technologies that are available in the market space, and what should we look after for the next phase of blockchain products. Because I think the space is getting more and more exciting. Everybody is, from all the events and all the activities that we have done so far, you would have noticed there's always a consistent shift between, centralized to decentralized to centralized ecosystems. And, then the space is consistently improving itself and at the same time innovating in a very rapid speed, and sometimes it's very difficult for even the people innovating in the space to catch up with what are the new ideas going out there. Even as an educator myself, it's quite difficult to keep up with all the innovation that's happening out there. And so in this case, we are trying a bit, an initiative here to try to do this consistent sharing with everybody, so we can get everybody like a kind of on the same line with us, and at the same time keep the like the knowledge sharing session going on, and to kind of improve the awareness in the ecosystem, so we do not miss out on new opportunities and new innovations, and we can be ahead of the curve and innovating ourselves. So that is basically one of the goals of us. Why are we actually really organizing these events? So today, as we said, on capital markets. So a bit of disclaimer: this is not financial advice. All this content you should be treated just an should be treated just as an education. You should not be like taking anything from this event and like treating it as any sort of financial advice where you like, oh, I don't want to be tomorrow probably be saying me, hey, Harpreet, you asked me to buy that token. Actually, that's the reason we're not shilling any token in these sessions. It's just about use cases, ideas, and technology. That's what has been the prime focus of most of our events. So the goal here from Bitcoin Malaysia is to actually train up to 50,000 people to learn about blockchain technology. So in this case, also provide a safe and neutral, easy environment to learn about technology. That's what we're trying to create at Bitcoin Malaysia. Help people to differentiate from real and fake and capture real opportunities, because there's a lot of fake scams and a lot of a lot of issues and misconception in the space. And because the space being very technical, it's very difficult to differentiate which is a legit, like a startup, and which is a scam, for example. So in this case, I feel it is our responsibility, being in the space, to educate, the people out there on what are the ways to evaluate the projects and what are the ways to actually understand what is being built behind them. So this is some of the initiatives we do to basically achieve our goals at Bitcoin Malaysia. And at the same time, we also look into creating new employments and job opportunities here in Malaysia. We would love to have more startups. One of the goals of Asia Blockchain Center is similar, to kind of bring more startups here, to kind of bring more investment and job opportunities here in Malaysia. And in this case, also creating more a kind of a more vibrant ecosystem where we can have more innovation being developed. And blockchain, so kind of find local adoption for a lot of the global ideas, because in this case, we find there's a lot of blockchain projects out there that would like to come into Malaysia, but they just didn't find what are the right platforms, because a lot of the other platforms do not really specifically talk about blockchain or cryptocurrencies. So we want Bitcoin Malaysia becomes that platform where really we talk about most of these blockchain projects and try to get adoption towards some of these global projects. So, I mean, here's where it comes in a bit, right? So there is a consistent battle between traditional databases and blockchain. So since beginning, we've always been talking about, like what really is the difference? Why is it really important? So financial services has always decided to be on traditional databases, where they decided to be centralized and decided to be restricted in like the way the data moves between financial institutes. And then you have a whole new open finance space, which is on the blockchain technology, where we basically things are a bit more agile. They're moving on much faster and high speed. And there is a new wave of innovation in finance itself that is growing. So there is a bit of a gap that is being created, and I will say that it also a wall between these two kind of system that is actually being which is emerging. So we hope by doing such events where we actually can kind of talk about these concepts, we kind of like not have the the differences between these two industries, where the traditional financial industry and the new emerging open finance industry, to kind of understand what is going on both sides and why they need each other, and kind of bridge the gap between these two sectors, and at the same time also allow blockchain adoption in both sides of this industry. So definitely we have a lot of blockchain, most of the blockchain adoption in the open finance industry. We would definitely want it to penetrate and support a lot of our financial, the current financial industry as well. As you see, a lot of, like this currently these two markets kind of acts as the yin and yang of the whole technology innovation. You definitely need to have one force with the other. You need to have a competing force to always pressure for innovation. For years, the traditional financial industry never had the innovate, like kind of an opposing force that can allow them to improve in the innovation. So today what we have is depth in the financial industry, and the largest depth that they has to us is depth of innovation. If you can see from like so many years, we moved on on our mobile apps and our internet application services. We have moved on from having like very bad social media application to really good social media applications that we are already quite happy with them, and they're consistently improving. But we had bad ATMs 15 years ago. We have bad ATMs today. We have bad financial services 15 years ago. We still have comparatively quite bad financial services today. So we can see that innovation kind of lagged slowly in the mainstream capital market. And now when there's opposing forces, you can see in the last 5 years, financial markets started to really accelerate in terms of innovation, especially due to fintech innovations and also open finance and decentralized finance markets coming in and cryptocurrencies coming in. And we started to see way more innovation happening on both sides. So that's why I feel we're kind of important to have this discussion. But I think we'll share more and talk more about what are the innovations happening in the capital market space once we bring in our other two panelists. So I would not want to waste much time talking about them. So let me introduce my first panelist, which will be Katherine Ng. She's the head of APAC marketing for Tezos Asia Pacific. And then we have our second, returning speaker, from Rodney Koh from Fennel Capital. He's the founder and CEO of Fennel Capital, which is an inspiring project coming in, planning to build its own IEO platform. So. Welcome, Katherine and Rodney. So maybe we can start with introducing yourselves. So maybe Katherine, you would want to take the go.
Yeah, thanks for the quick intro, Harpreet. So I head up APAC marketing at TZ APAC. So we're a enterprise blockchain consultancy focused on the adoption of Tezos. And I head up Marcoms for the region.
Okay, how about Rodney?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here. A bit about myself. I am a lawyer, a corporate lawyer by profession. I'm a partner in the firm here in Kuala Lumpur. But in my past life, I used to be an investment banker with Arab Malaysian, and I eventually became head of corporate finance of Southern Bank Berhad before it merged with CIMB. So I've started Fennel Capital as a company that aspires to be an IEO platform operator under the new digital asset guidelines here in Malaysia. So that's where we are heading, and we're doing a lot of groundwork to apply for our license right now. So a bit more about that later.
Okay, so I would like to start with asking your opinion. What are the best use cases that you see in capital market right now where we can actually adopt blockchain? And is there anything that, maybe I'll start with Katherine, is there anything that Tezos is working on right now?
Yeah, so most of the use cases right now are focused on CBDC for capital markets. The central banks are leading the way in this, and with Tezos, we've been selected as one of the public blockchains in the CBDC trials with the SocGen and Bank of France. So that's one win for us. And in Asia, I think Consensus was selected as the facilitator for the Hong Kong Financial Monetary Authority and in project into non-Lion Rock with Bank of Thailand to facilitate cross-border payments. That's in the wholesale CBDC side. So it's interesting times. It's a merging of public institutions, the central banks, and then you have public blockchains entering the enterprise space, which was more often the realm of Corda and Hyperledger, So we're seeing this interesting hybrid convergence of public chains into credit.
Yeah. How about you, Rodney? Do you have any favorite use case?
Well, let me say that we are presently, under the laws in Malaysia right now, we haven't really begun operations of actually creating capital market ready tokens, and by that capital market ready tokens, I'm talking about particularly security tokens in itself. Our hope is that under the framework that we have, we will be able to offer security tokens on the blockchain, and as part of the entire ecosystem that is currently actually being implemented by the SC. I think, Harpreet, you are aware that the IO platform guidelines actually have not come into force yet. But what I understand is that they are coming into force very soon, all right, together with the guidelines dealing with custodial wallets in itself. So with the digital asset exchanges that we have, the custodial wallet rules and the IO platform operators, that will create a whole new, in effect, capital market that is available to the investment public over here in Malaysia, and that's what we see beginning to happen. The good thing is that under the rules, there are no restrictions as to what sort of security tokens that we can actually issue. So we can actually issue a bond, we can actually issue a warrant, we can actually issue hybrid instruments in itself. That just requires actually careful legal structuring and, of course, token programming with good token economics too. So the possibilities here are very exciting, and that's why we're in this space.
Yeah, I mean, going on the topic of CBDCs, as what Katherine said earlier, who would have thought that governments would actually consider open public blockchains to, build CBDCs on? We always thought that the governments would not, want to deal with open public blockchains for years, due to the whole nature. But I'm quite surprised. What are the reasons actually they decided to get on board with Tezos for building their CBDC POC?
I think it came down to more of the robustness of the tech, because Tezos is actually the EVM is built using Michelson, so it's very strongly typed that helps with formal verification. So I think it was more that the tech and the security that it provides versus more ideological reasons like. It's public, so everything's broadcasted. I don't know what will people say. So I think it's also a chance for banks to experience what it's like if they want to be interoperable, because it's the public blockchains, the open source communities that are putting in all the retail liquidity, right? Yeah, into the token. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting to see that, right? I mean, the first things that came in mind, and when governments was proposing CBDCs, everybody thought there's going to be another centralized currency that is going to be similar to another fintech application. That's what everybody had in their mind. But when we started to hear like Tezos is building something on them, and we started to hear more public blockchains to come up and announce that they're actually building POCs in what we call cooperation with central banks and building some sort of POCs on public blockchain, it's like, wow, that's a huge shift in mindset. But at the same time, I do echo with what Katherine has shared, that definitely public blockchain has much stronger, technology frameworks. They're much more tested. They are, on the battleground. Basically they have gone through an open world of exposure of hackers from everywhere around the world trying to hack and steal the already available assets on the public blockchain. So they do have a strong technology, protocols that are already running. At the same time, it is also a kind of a way of building transparency into the financial system, bringing, to ensure that, all the, the financial system is transparent, and at the same time it's open for everybody. And I think that's some of the core objectives that a lot of governments that are, looking more towards achieving those goals of transparency and trust. They are more open towards adopting public chains. But there also we can hear what happened with China CBDC and what happened with CBDC use cases in multiple other countries. They're currently more closed loop. They're trying to test out on private public blockchains and roll it out, like kind of a more enterprise public blockchain, and in this case, kind of roll it out between the departments itself. So I think that's it's quite an interesting shift. But talking from your earlier point, Rodney, yes, I mean, Malaysia still haven't released the IEO guidelines, but we already started to hear some innovation. I would really would have loved to have Chuanji up here today to share about how they're actually issuing bond issuance on, like with Bursa Malaysia. I believe they're busy with another party here today to basically discuss on more blockchain use cases and blockchain projects with some of our mainstream financial players. But I think Malaysia it's in it for the innovation. So I don't think we are just waiting for token projects to like for the token like the IEO policy to really build anything in the capital market. Even at the moment, I think there's already quite a good number of sukuk discussion, like building Islamic shares, in the case at the same time also building bonds on blockchain, and also start to looking into the next generation stock exchange technology. There are a good number of use cases that have already been discussed without a tokenomics model backing it. So what do you think, in this case, like since we already have some of the discussion going on, what do you think, what will be maybe the time frame when we can see this like adoption happening? Maybe it will be in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. When will you see Malaysia adopting blockchain?
Well, I think let me step back from the tenet of the discussion here right now. I like the CBDC POCs now are actually being tried in itself. I think the biggest non-CBDC attempt that was stifled in its infancy was Libra, I believe, coming up with a global monetary system that was backed purely by private parties in itself. But of course, the idea of a digital form of money, having been an ex-banker, I tell you, is not only just attractive, but it allows for the extension of monetary and payment systems, right, to parties or countries or even places where all they have is a cell phone, really, in itself. Okay, right now with the SWIFT system that we have, which is based in Switzerland, but American owned and control in itself, you actually need to actually get to a bank that has a specialized terminal to transfer money. But if you imagine if you actually have a successful form of digital currency that will allow a trader sitting somewhere in Somalia or Ethiopia or anywhere else out in Mongolia, being able to trade with some other person elsewhere just by their cell phone in itself. That itself would be a huge boost to not just economies, but in terms of trade and banking services, being able to deliver banking services to people who are otherwise unbanked. So that is probably a really great innovation itself. Coming back to your point on the capital market, Harpreet, funnily enough, the way we in Fennel Capital tend to think that what the blockchain is now allowing us to do is to be able to do capital market work like issuing securities and bonds and all other forms of derivatives, say, in a more efficient environment and a system that costs less in itself in terms of its total infrastructure. For instance, in my days when I was an investment banker, whenever we actually took a company up for listing on Bursa itself, just the printing of documents itself was a monumental expense, waste of money, and dissemination out there. Just the purchasing of shares itself was a huge effort just to market those matters. Today, we actually would have systems which are more efficient, which are safer, which are much quicker. And I, of course, I'm old enough to remember a world where there are no apps. You were just talking about bad apps. I can remember a time there were no such thing as apps. All right. So therefore, that innovation is like taking what we've done in the past, well understood too, very well understood, especially something like bonds. All right, putting it on the blockchain and showcasing how more efficient technology can make an whole process to be, right? More efficient and safer. I think these things are what will be, I would say, the hallmarks of how we actually will see adoption coming along. Right now, the investment public and of course the central authorities too, taking every step slowly as they generally would do, because these things seem to be new and unfamiliar. It's only the technology that seems to be unfamiliar, but really the concepts behind currencies, the concepts behind capital market ideas, capital market products have been there for a very long time. And as long as people understand this is just what we've been doing all this while on a new platform, I think the adoption rate will start improving. So I'm quite confident to see over the next 2 to 5 years, we will see far more adoption of this as people get to know what this technology can really do.
Yeah, I think the adoption is already happening. So
Yeah.
I really like a paper that came out, I think about 3 or 4 years ago by Might. The Might CEO did mention by 2025, Malaysia will be using blockchain. But I think just what came out a few days back, where our Malaysian custom decided to go up and sign up a POC agreement with Tradelines IBM to basically start doing some traceability on blockchain. And I think once we start doing custom clearance, we started to do traceability. I think then supply chain finance will come in, and many other new financial instruments will started to kick in and started to adopt blockchain. So I think it's already happening in a certain extent. But overall, as what I echo quite similarly with you, because a new technology should bring in more efficiency on like a kind of improving the previous processes. It should bring in more transparency, in this case, to build more trust, give better ownership, and also reduce costs. And I think blockchain does all of that, and it kind of brings in most of these values into the financial system. But talking about some of the concepts that you did mention earlier, that what Libra achieved to do, but I think a lot of public blockchain kind of aim to do the same thing, and I think Tezos is planning to do the same thing as well. So maybe I would like to go back to Katherine and ask, what are the next things, Tezos is planning to do in the financial inclusion side, maybe? How are you planning to get more adoption for the unbanked?
Yeah, so I think on the financial inclusion side, we have the decentralized exchange app called Dexter. And there's also the stablecoin issuances that we're working on, tokenization of assets, such as NFTs, and also other equities and other securities, traditional securities, that we're working with other strategic partners on issuing as a technology partner. So I think these are all, these are still very early days, I feel, because whenever you have a shift, like a migration of tech, especially when it comes to the banks, right? it takes years, I think, to even migrate even on existing technology. So one more new technology. So you have the startup space really coming up with new ideas all the time and MVPs. But then how do you actually onboard these startups into these ideas into existing infra, capital markets infra? That's the tricky part, right? And then that's why Malaysian regulators, Malaysian exchanges like Bursa, Labuan, I think that they're doing a good job, integrating I think hashtags for bond issuance, and then and then issuing licenses, so firms like Rodney's Fennel Capital can also launch this kind of new technologies. I think it also takes a transfer of talent. So from capital markets, traditional capital markets, to blockchain. Yeah. So there, Rodney.
Katherine, I think it takes a transfer of very brave or foolhardy souls, okay, to go into this new space itself. But it is exciting, and I think and you're absolutely right to say that existing institutions are the most conservative, and they will be very careful to actually move into that particular direction itself. So, which is why I think our Securities Commission has done a bold experiment by allowing 3 exchanges, which are not linked to any of the traditional exchanges that we have here, to begin operating. And the IO operators, they're also probably looking at sort of almost new players coming in under their supervision and their guidelines, and to see how this can particularly develop. I believe that eventually the mainstream banks and the mainstream institutions will come on board once they see that not just POCs, but they see an active market that actually works. All right. So the things that you're doing, Katherine, over at Tezos itself is very important, because these are the first steps, the steps that prove that hey, it's not quicksand. You can actually walk on it and you won't sink. Yeah, that's why I like it, and I think it's very exciting, and really like the work that everybody's doing here.
Yeah, actually, I agree with both of the points that have actually been shared by you. We definitely need talent, and we definitely need brave heart souls to actually go out and push this idea. Because to be honest, like it comes to when it comes to adoption, you really need people who understand the space and understand the value that it can bring. Maybe like in this case, we actually, one of the issues, because I've been training multiple banks, and I have talked to like advising multiple banks as well in terms of like blockchain adoption, and we have gone through so many discussions in terms of how like banks can adopt blockchain. But one of the issues that I really notice is that they just are not like not technical, or they're not like in the computer space to really value like what the technology brings. But or even, let's say we talk to them about like what are the concepts and ideas that can actually improve and bring efficiency to financial, they just feel is a bit too risky. So maybe like in this case we can see there's usually always 2 sides of innovation. Either you collaborate and you innovate in the existing infrastructure, or you disrupt. I think with that point, I would like to jump into like asking your opinions. What do you guys think about decentralized finance? Since this is like one of the most hot topics going on recently, like everybody in cryptocurrency space is jumping on to like the whole frenzy about decentralized finance. There's new types of DEXs being launched. There's new kind of tokens, airdrops every day. And I'm also very curious to find out, what is Tezos doing in decentralized finance space? So maybe I'll start with Katherine and then move to Rodney.
Yeah. So when you talk about yield farming, I think that's not our competitive strength. But we are focusing on building the infra layer for DeFi. So you need to start with a DEX that has basically a decentralized order book, right? Like it's just atomic swaps. Because there's some DEXs that have centralized order books too. So it's a new model, and you have to let these like projects list themselves. So you disrupt the entire due diligence process, makes the listing process a lot easier, and go to market a lot quicker. Yeah. So I think we're just focused on the infra part. Yeah, just getting the wallets up, DEXs up. We're taking the long game here, but hopefully in time when we get that infra layer, we can build more interesting things.
Yeah. What about you, Rodney?
I can't say that I'm very familiar with DeFi, but coming from a traditional banking background, I see that as an attempt to create a slew of banking services without having a centralized authority, without having a bank, banking services without having a bank, or having some form of self-governing platform that allows for people to make swaps, exchanges, and to even make a bit of money out of that. It really runs almost contrary to what you do if you did a corporate finance degree as I did. It's very, very different. But what I would say is this: some of the ideas I've seen, whether they will succeed in the long term or not, that remains to be seen. But what is very clear is that the technology that they are developing, technology that they're developing itself, will prove useful even in the capital market space. For instance, a token which actually can actually self-adjust its numbers because somebody else has subscribed for another bunch of tokens. It's like what we do right now. If you actually raise money in a capital for say, for example, a Series A, there will be covenants in the Series A deed that usually restricts as an anti-dilution clause that if Series B is of less value, then Series A will issue more shares to actually make up for it. So it's a simple anti-dilution thing. We can see these things being actually built into the tokens itself. All right. So these sort of and that's because somebody has put their mind to it and say, how do I solve anti-dilution in the token itself? And there you go. All right. There are DeFi technology out there that helps these things. So I believe that whether DeFi takes off or not, or whether it's here to stay or whether it's going to come and go, there's going to be a lot of innovative work that has gone on, all right, that will certainly benefit the capital markets or the financial markets, the blockchain financial markets to come. So I'm quite certain that there will be many interesting things to see as they come down.
Yeah. So I mean, looking even similar. So I mean, just a few days back, we had another panel, and I shared this discussion that all those technologies that we're seeing in DeFi, it's actually at least 2 years to 3 years old. We've been talking about Tezos, Tezos, liquidity pools for the past 2 years, and it was really never that sexy until Uniswap, and now we really did a good job in terms of trying to show that we actually can get those numbers. We can actually acquire a user-friendly a DEX space. And actually, talking back on Katherine, I think maybe liquidity pool game is definitely already been won by some of the major, public blockchain protocols. But today, the real game that I think will start here is cross-chain atomic swaps and inter-blockchain liquidity, which will also kind of really push for cross-chain, data transfers, cross-chain interoperability, amongst them. And even echoing with what Rodney has said earlier, that definitely you have seen a lot of the stuff that has been done in the ICO days. It's now kind of really coming back, and a lot of the stuff, a lot of the ideas and innovations happened there, also started to slowly come into mainstream adoption, right? So in this things, we actually can see a lot of the stuff really being adopted, and maybe similarly what is being done in DeFi today, because we have many new sort of interesting projects, everything from token interest-bearing tokens. We have NFT collectibles that actually you can farm. Farming itself is a whole new idea. Imagine having a share farming another share, right? So imagine if you're holding one share, but if you hold that share in if the share has a utility as well, and it allow you to farm another share by, instead of just holding onto the share, you would want to farm that share, right? In at the same time, as you said, adjusting liquidation, but also what about adjusting liquidity in the country? Because today we have one way of doing our currencies. We just keep printing and getting spoil, and basically just and burning the spoiled ones and hoping they get lost, and kind of adjust the value and kind of sticking to the valuation. But what happens when CBDC happens, when the chance of losing money goes out of that equation, right? So that's where I think a lot of these new innovations that are happening in DeFi will actually be adopted in CBDC models, because we have the whole liquidity adjusting stable coins that actually can go out and ensure that the coin value maintained, because the whole token supplies kind of shifts and kind of adjusts itself according to value. I think CBDCs would want to, if anybody who's actually researching CBDCs would want to read into these concepts as well. So coming out, as we talked about ICOs and how the innovations have inspired some of the innovations today, I mean, I would like to touch on IEOs and STOs. I think Tezos is definitely one of the leading platforms in terms of doing STOs and STOs for REITs. And definitely, Rodney, you're doing something on IEOs. Maybe you can share, like what are the new interesting STOs or any of the projects, or like what are the things you got, what are the infrastructures you're building for STO projects on Tezos?
Yeah, so we have Vertalo, I think that's going to issue about $200 million worth of securitized tokenized REITs. And I think we have also Elevated Returns looking to launch their own STO in Thailand on a licensed crypto exchange there. So that there's movement in this space, and I think it's coming down to entrepreneurs who believe in shifting financial innovation to protocols, just putting their capital to work within smart contract programming, right? So you can write, I think someone mentioned like you can write literally a bank account program or a lending program in like X amount of like, I don't know, under 100 lines of code or something. It's become that efficient. So, what used to be the space of a lot of regulatory burden now has shifted to smart contract and actually it helps enforce automatically the origination, the servicing, like everything's done on chain. And I think like I agree with what you said. At some point, I'm seeing this cross chain liquidity as well happening once Ethereum developers decide to like open up a little bit more. I think that this sense of wanting to be more transparent, removing barriers to entry, I think like creating more synthetic ways to move capital easily. Yeah, all within smart contract. It's gonna be a huge game changer.
Yeah. What about you, Rodney?
Well, there's just something I want to pick up from what Katherine said, is that today you can have a loan contract all done in code and done very simply in itself. While I agree that is very true, but the lawyer in me tells me that we do have one particular problem. If you want to get a contract enforced under the Contracts Act 1950, it has to be in English. So there still remains, I tell you, and honestly, the jury is still out on this, and the legal community is going to say this. Okay, which one is going to win the day, the code or the written contract in itself? Problem is, you can't go to a judge in Singapore or Malaysia and give her a set of code and say, well, can you please enforce this contract, this particular section of code? All right, okay, and that's not going to happen, right? So where we really, innovation is just going so far ahead that our existing systems just cannot meet the needs and requirements. So I don't know what the solution is, but for you guys at Tezos, keep doing what you're doing. But we need to think of the ways going forward and how we're going to actually enforce these issues there. In Fennel, we've actually cast our minds to those sort of issues. Because when you actually start issuing security tokens itself, how do you then put a whole complex set of rights into a security token? All right, okay, because when people buy a token, they're actually buying a bunch of legally enforceable rights. Same thing as you buy a share, same thing as you open a bank account. A bank account is the shows in action, your right against the bank, right? So how do we do all these? And so that's why some of the structures that we've been experimenting and playing around with combines the two, all right? Combines the technology that affords us to write smart contracts that keep the main features there, but also incorporates well-drafted legal documents that underpin the value of the token as it goes out to the market itself. So we're trying to do these two in terms of our token design and proposals going forward there. Okay, technology is going so fast that the overall
It's interesting how, we want to incorporate business design into these smart contracts, right? Like, I think a lot of the times, I think with electronic trading, for example, you have these market making firms that have their own quants, they have their own algorithms running and beating the market at the expense of retailers. It's interesting. Like the code is designed to, the algorithm's designed to actually be profit maximizing at all costs. So I'm just thinking, like, where do you draw the line between fairness and ethics and also like profit maximization, right? Like it's a bit.
Yeah,
that's not right or wrong. Yeah.
No, I mean, to put that in perspective, I think basically, if you draw the line, is where the code draws the line. If you, to be honest, in like a lot of this DeFi space, like to kind of see how DEXs work. DEXs remove that equation of this huge amount of speculation that we could do on centralized exchanges, because they use a new side of protocols, new sort of technologies, new sort of what they call market making protocols, where they it's very hard for you to do the system. It brings more predictability into how it will operate, but it removes a bit of that speculation angle in terms of how an exchange can operate. So I think over time we will build systems like that will actually keep ethics in mind, because definitely programmers need to know how to maintain ethics in terms of the products that they develop, and at the same time ensuring that the users benefit from it, not lose from it. And at the same time, I think one of the reasons there is a huge push from centralized exchanges to DEXs recently is because of a lot of these fairness systems that are even being built in DEXs itself. Because right now I can go and pump a coin in a centralized exchange and dump it in the few minutes later. But let's say if I want to dump the same thing in a DEX, I need to keep on selling all the way down until the algorithms start to build a lower curve. So it's much harder to push the prices and values over there. So overall, there is an technology difference. But actually, I kind of like what Rodney says. We have to humanize this technology, right? Currently, because you can't enforce a smart contract. But a lot of people say, Harpreet, don't keep giving free ideas on panels. But I think there should be somebody who's building this, because I have no time to build this. I think Tezos should give a grant for this and build a legal contract to a smart contract translator. If you can build, that will solve the legal problem. All the lawyers will come and thank you for this.
Right? If that happens, that would just solve so many problems across the board in itself. But to translate human intention into code, I'm not a coder, but when I try to express human intention, even in language, right, which is our native way of expressing it, that itself is tough and hard, because and so many nuances. But nevertheless, that should not stop us from continuing to try, or at least, the very least, have the fundamental terms, the main terms itself, being put into code, so that it just allows for greater efficiency on execution of all these contracts as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, it's doable. I mean, we're already using a lot of tools that actually takes programming languages, kind of just build them into simple, more readable languages. So it's doable for us to do a legal language contract, which when you actually just type in, it will actually build a smart contract version of the rules at the back. And then you actually confirm on the legal contract, but it builds you a smart contract at the back, which you can just attach it to the, to the legal contract and get it approved. And I think I should stop giving ideas. Leslie just commented down there. It's like, bro, stop giving ideas, because every time somebody will build a token out of it, and then they will build a coin out of it, and we will see, a token offering happening soon on this. And just
can suggest a new governance mechanism.
Yes, and they will put up a new governance tokens on it, so you can go and vote on the legal contract, and And the more I talk about it, the more ideas I'm giving them. So I'm gonna move back. First of all, and also welcome everybody who's actually just joining in the stream. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them. And nice to meet everybody here. Hidayah, Chongyi, Colbert, Leslie. Everybody, thanks for joining the stream. And if you have any questions, And nope, there's not going to be durian tokens or nasi lemak tokens from Malaysia. And in this case, and yes, no, we are not getting an IP lawyer. Or maybe yes, if there's an IP lawyer, jot this down for me, please. Maybe I can.
Katherine Koh doesn't want the tokens. He wants the real durians and nasi lemak, I think.
No, yeah, he said no, he said tokens, durian tokens and nasi lemak. If you see in the comments.
I'm going to talk to Colbert.
Yeah.
All right, get the real thing. That's a lot better.
Yeah. So there
There you go.
I mean, if you get the durian, actual durian, it doesn't speculate and appreciate in value, right? A durian token might give you 10 durians tomorrow.
It tastes so wonderful. Okay. Katherine, you
I
like durians?
think you'll do well. Just farm durians.
Huh?
Yeah.
Sell tokens. Yeah, sell tokens, raise money to go. We farm durians, right? Okay, that's an idea that's already been thought of actually, and maybe done. I think
Yeah,
it's already
probably,
been
it's
it has
already
been
done.
done in the ICO days itself already.
Yeah, it's already done.
It's I mean, like a lot of these people have already started, like this idea is way ahead, and there's a lot of concepts. There were some success cases, but like there were also some weird cases, banana coin, and some of the weird stuff that happened in the ecosystem. But let's not talk about that. We're going out of topic. And Leslie, we're going to keep that topic for DeFi talks, okay? Not for our capital market talk today. But coming back, I think we have seen a lot of traction going on in the IU space. What are your expectations? After once these guidelines in Malaysia come in. I think in Singapore we already seen STOs happening for some time, ICOs being regulated and happening for some time. In Malaysia, this is something new, right? For us, we're going to first time see regulated token offerings happening here. And what are your expectations for it for this market, and what would you want to see in the IEO market?
I think the IO market is ripe to take off. The barrier that stands in the way is principally education and understanding. I've had discussions with other people, fund managers, and people in the capital markets profession. They see that as the next move and the next development in terms of where IEOs are going to go in Malaysia itself. They've seen what's happened in Singapore, but over here they're kind of a bit cautious in saying that if you want to do one, a simple one like a bond issue first, so that there will be initial take up to show that an issue of this nature can work, and then you can start offering more sophisticated instruments out there. But I'm of the belief that there is a generational change in the financial world and financial markets. I hate to say this, but most of the guys who are in investment banking with me are all looking towards retirement. It's all and they're moving on. It's you younger people, the next generation, the Katherines and the Harpreets of the world, who are coming up, and I'm very excited for all of you. And having a far more open and acceptable mind, and you guys can recognize that this is the value of blockchain-based products such as IEOs. So I say this all the time. This is the change is going to happen because it's going to be generational. It's going to be generational because the fund managers who are here today and coming tomorrow will look at it and say, that's another class of assets that I can invest in. They're not going to look at it and say, and I don't really understand this. I don't know what it is. They're going to say, yep, that's just another whole new class of assets. They are being created by the industry, on the blockchain itself, which I can now put some of my money in there. Okay. And so I am very hopeful. I think the future is bright, and that's the direction of we're headed. Okay, and Harpreet's battery has just been, I think it's just died. Yeah, I said we saw battery exhausted, right?
Hey guys, battery. Never mind, I'm still here. I think the camera battery kind of just exhausted, but I think that is kind of the cue for us to kind of really stop talking about capital markets already, because Katherine actually have to run for a next meeting after this. But before you go,
Oh, he's
I
back.
got it.
Oh, you're
I got
back.
it. We have a backup always, we always prepare a second one. We know these things usually happen. So I think before you go, Katherine, there's a question from Colbert. He is asking what is the stance on by MAS on security tokens. Maybe you can just answer that before you leave. And right after this, we'll just do a closing.
Yeah, I can only answer based on publicly available information. I think that MES, their public stance is really just to launch the Payment Services Act. So that's licensing players that want to issue digital payment tokens, but they've not issued a public stance per se on security tokens. I think not. Though I think there's this SGX endorsed platform called iStocks. Yeah, that does do issuances, I think. And then there's Bondy blocks in the MAS sandbox and investor crowd as well in the sandbox too. So I think it is still experimenting. Yeah.
Okay. Colbert say noted. And in this case of like a Payment Act, if anybody from the Malaysian regulator is actually watching, we need a Payment Act as well. We have been looking this since the ICO days, so we actually can start spending those tokens in Malaysian economy. But I think that's a discussion for another day. And we'll end with this. I would like to definitely thank our panelists. Thank you, Katherine. Thank you, Rodney, for actually joining us in. I know it was a very last-minute call, and thanks for taking out some time and joining us. So I will not take much more time. I know you guys are busy people, and you guys get to move on with your life right now. So thank you, and I will actually for everybody who's watching in today, we will move. Basically, tomorrow we are going on to the next panel. We're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about what are the next protocols, next gen protocols that are coming into the space. And wait 1 second. What are the next gen protocols that are coming into the space? We have Hedera Hashgraph headers. We're going to be talking about Lightning Network. We're going to talk about some of the interoperability protocols that are being developed in the space. But tomorrow, just bear in mind, the time is a bit different. We did it 4 to 5 p.m. because a lot of you complained that Harpreet, you guys keep planning events at 8 to 9 p.m. We need to go on, enjoy our Friday nights. Please do it earlier. So that's there you have it. So we did it earlier, tomorrow 4 to 5 p.m. Please come in and join us and join in the discussion on how the next generation DLT platform going to look like. With that, I think I'm going to sign off and see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thanks, Katherine. Thanks, Rodney.
Nice meeting you, Katherine. Good night.
Nice meeting you.
Bye. Good night.